Hello, friends. This is Heather Gill, and I'm a certified life coach and certified hypnotherapist. And some of the noises that you hear in the background are my little gray friend, Roy. Roy's an African gray parrot, and he's 14 years old. But today, let's play a game I like to call What If? What if, for just one day, like Marianne Rademacher said, we acted like everything was easy? What if the world was full of possibility and not disappointment? What if you smiled at everyone you met? And what if you were cautiously optimistic, or even fully optimistic? It's easy. You just take a negative thought and flip it on its head, and before you know it, you're looking for the good. What if you thought that the person that you dislike the most was just doing the very best that they could with what they had at the time? What if you wrote down 2 things that you were truly grateful for and put it in your pocket and then looked at it from time to time throughout your day? What if it's true, like Dr. Wayne Dwyer once said, that if things can fall apart, they can fall together? What if you looked at the world with a sense of wonder and curiosity? What if things weren't as bad as they seem? What if you took a nice deep breath and then let it out and counted to 5 before you responded to a jab from someone else? What if for one day you believed that we were all one and just our bodysuits were different? And finally, what if you took one item from my list today that called to you and practiced it just for one day? Now, the story I really want to tell you today is about teamwork and unlikely allies. A few years ago, I guess more than a few years ago now, my dad and I were planning to climb Mount Hood. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's about 10,000 feet high, and there have been several very tragic happenings that have occurred on it. But my dad was in a rut, and he asked me if I wanted to try climbing it with him. And we were going to do it right. We signed up with a group called the Mazamas that lead climbs all over here in the Pacific Northwest. And since we'd never climbed a mountain before, we felt like we needed some instruction on mountaineering skills. And one of the areas of instruction was rappelling. Now, to me, it doesn't make sense to just walk right off a cliff. And part of what you fight when you're learning mountaineering skills or doing something like this is, besides a healthy respect for nature, is rappelling. And you have to take a step off the cliff and trust your equipment. Well, the first time you do it, it's really hard to take that first step. And I kind of froze. I was standing there and, of course, getting all up in my head. And one of the men in the group started heckling me and making fun of me and telling me that I was a big coward and he couldn't believe that I was on part of his climbing team, et cetera, et cetera. And he kept going and going. And at first I felt ashamed and felt like crying, but I didn't. And then next I decided I was going to show him. And I took that step backwards off the cliff. And as soon as I did it, I remembered the proper way to rappel. And it was a blast. I loved it. It was actually my very favorite part of mountaineering training. And so another part came up the next time we met, and that was what to do if someone in your group starts to fall. And what I mean by that is the group we were going with was all roped together. And so if one of us falls, it can be a really dangerous thing if you don't know what to do to preserve not only the person who falls, but the rest of the group as well. And what we were instructed to do was to fall flat on our stomachs, dig in our ice axe and crampons into the snow and ice, and hold firm. So we were practicing this one day, and the guy who is heckling me, karma comes into play here, as you might guess. The guy who is heckling me starts to actually fall, to really fall, not just a controlled fall or, hey, pretend you're going to fall kind of thing. He was really falling. So just as my training had told me, I fell flat on my stomach, dug in my ice axe and my crampons, and saved him from a really nasty bunch of injuries that could have happened. And from then on, he was pretty quiet when we were practicing some of the things that we had learned. So fast forward to actually climbing the mountain. The climb started at about 3 in the morning. And the reason for that was that we were climbing in May. And in May, some of the snow cap starts to melt on the top, and you want to get started on your climb before it gets too late in the day, or it will turn to mush and make climbing a lot more difficult and slippery. So we climb, in a zigzag pattern up the mountain, and there are a couple of kind of scarier areas of the climb. The sulfur pits are just annoying because they smell really bad, and so we kind of went by them quickly, and we got to see the sun come up on the horizon, and it's beautiful from a mountain. So anyway, when we're almost to the summit, there's this place where I know a lot of people think the summit is like this, but it's more like a gradual, after you do the zigzag pattern, once you get to a certain point, and we climbed the west face, it was more like this, where you walk along like a ledge, and then the summit's right there. So we're walking along, and pretty soon I look over to one side and I don't see anything. It's so straight up and down that you can't see the side of the mountain on the one side. And then because it was a little bit cloudy, on the other side, you also couldn't see the side of the mountain. So it was a very disorienting thing. And a lot like I would imagine walking on a tightrope would be. But I froze. I just stood in place and I couldn't move. It was that primal fear. And one of my teachers has told me that the only fear that we're really born with is the fear of falling. And when you can't see to either side of you, and I couldn't really see ahead of me either because of the cloud cover, it can be very disorienting. And I was just standing there petrified. And then I hear my dad say, "Don't look, to either side. Just put one foot in front of the other one and walk forward. Just listen to my voice and come to where you hear me talking. And then Donald, who was the guy who had heckled me and who I kind of saved when we were doing the ice axe training, was also cheering me on. To my big surprise, he kept saying, "It's okay. You can come to me. You can keep going. You can keep going." And so what I did is I tried to blank out everything except for their voices and the feel of my feet walking along this thin edge. And it worked out. I made it to the summit. And this whole experience taught me a very, very important lesson, which is you never know who your allies and friends might turn out being. So before you judge someone a jerk or whatever it is, you might want to consider how much you really know them. And that's the second time in my life when teamwork actually saved me from something pretty nasty. And I guess that's the message for today, is to try and look for the good not only in situations, but in people. Because there's a saying that a lot of people have, and that is that nothing surprises them anymore. I get surprised every day by the cruelty, but also the kindness of others when there's a situation where kindness needs to be exhibited. Just this past week, and after this story, I'll sign off for today, but last week, I guess it was Friday, I was coming home from work and it was really hot and I'm sitting in my car and at a stoplight, and I noticed this homeless man, and he's got a bicycle with one of those little trailers attached to it, and it was full of all of his worldly possessions. And I saw him crossing, and he went right in front of me in this intersection, and the little trailer flipped over and all of his things spilled out all over the road. So without thinking about it, I jumped right out of my car. I went running over to him and I said, "Can I help you, sir?" Because I was afraid that he wouldn't have enough time to gather all of his things, or he would lose some things, or people would start honking when the light changed. So I rushed out there and helped him. I grabbed up his skillet and his other things, and I put them over on the side of the road because I didn't know how he had arranged things. But this was all he had. And it was all over the place. And I tried to imagine how he might have felt. He might have felt humiliated because all of his earthly wares were suddenly in the street for everybody to see. His plight was in the street for everyone to see. So we gathered up all of his things, and I put them on the side of the road, and he started loading them back. And I just turned away because it looked like the light was changing. And he said, "Thank you, ma'am." And I said, "Happy to do it," because I was. In that one moment, it didn't matter who he was or who I was. What mattered was a second of kindness. And I'd like you to remember that sometimes kindness doesn't take hardly any time out of your day. It doesn't hold you up when you're in a hurry. It doesn't do anything except spread a ripple of warmth and hope. And that's it for this week. Again, my name is Heather Gill. I'm a certified life coach, hypnotherapist, and practical optimist. I hope you have a wonderful week and you decide to watch next week. Thanks again. Be safe, kind, and well, and look for the good. And as my friend says, walk forward every day and don't look back, because you're not going that way.